Who are you? The proud Lord said that I must bow so low.
So for those of you who didn't read the description, this video is going to be an analysis on the character Jamie Lannister from the Song of Fire and Ice book series. Like many others, I too am a huge fan of the HBO adaptation. However, some of you should consider this a disclaimer. This video will focus entirely on Jamie from the books, and I will not be mentioning the HBO adaptation of the series at all. So for those of you who have seen the series and not read the books and would rather not have the series spoiled, this video is not for you. However, for those people who really love the series, I think the books are amazing and you should definitely give them all a read. They contain everything that makes the TV show good and more. They are much more in-depth than the TV series and give a much more precise and cognitive insight into what's going on. You see things directly from the characters' points of view, and unlike in the TV medium, you're going to be able to hear their thoughts and get a much closer look at their perspective. If you don't want to spoil the next few seasons for yourself, then I understand. However, I think you should ask yourself the question, did knowing what happens in other book-to-film adaptations really ruin the experience for you? Was Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings made any worse because you had previously read the books? Having read all the books, I can't wait to see some of the scenes take place in live action. In fact, I can safely say I'm more excited for the next few seasons than I would be if I hadn't read the books. So for anyone who has not read the books, this is an endorsement. Read the fucking books, then come back to this video. So disclaimer aside, and without further ado, let's get on to Jamie Lannister, the Kingslayer. Where to even begin? He is described by others as handsome with a smile that can cut like a knife. He is also famed as an incredible swordsman, perhaps on par with any of the best in the series. On appearance alone, he almost seems like a generic Prince Charming. In fact, and this is the one time I'll mention it, the TV series seems to have gone almost out of its way to further this cheeky little misconception. Almost instantly, it becomes apparent that this is not how things are. Jamie Lannister is a uber badass with a selfish attitude and a short temper. At first, he is arguably even the bad guy. If we look at it through the point of view of Cat, Bran, Eddard Stark, and whoever else, in the first book, Jamie Lannister seems like an irredeemable asshole. Violent and sister-fucking, completely beyond salvation. However, true to George R.R. Martin's writing style, we later find out in a very clever manner that things are not what they seem. A Song of Ice and Fire is a series where good and evil barely exist. Cruel things happen, and characters are repeatedly fed bowls of shit. The whole concept of honor in the world George R.R. Martin has created is fundamentally flawed, which becomes more and more apparent as the series goes on. Right now I'm going to tell you about how Jamie Lannister comes across in the first two books and how he's perceived by other characters, before talking about his somewhat disarming redemption in A Storm of Swords. It's not actually until the third book that Jamie is given his own point of view, so to start with, what we see of him is all through other characters' eyes. We are not given a detailed backstory to the character other than years ago he killed the king he had sworn to protect, Aerys Targaryen, which has tainted his reputation and given him the name Kingslayer, the somewhat unaffectionate name. It makes him known as an oathbreaker and someone who lacks honour. Characters like Catelyn Stark perhaps rightfully hate Jamie for pushing Bran out of a tower and his general vulgar arrogance. Eddard, the character who is presented as the most honourable at the start of the series, harbours a deep resentment towards Jamie for breaking his own vows. What is great about A Song of Ice and Fire is that when you're in a character's point of view, you're in their shoes and in their head. This allows for a lot of empathy and relatability for the most part. Characters like Cersei, and especially one of my personal favourites, Victorian Greyjoy, are a bit harder to relate to than others. However, for the most part, characters seem real and we're allowed to empathise with them. So when Catelyn describes her hatred for the Lannisters, we believe her. We can get behind her and we can understand why she feels the way she does. Eddard as well, seeing Jamie as someone who is untrustworthy and unworthy of the various titles that are his birthright, also becomes a little bit relatable as well. So through these points of view, the image we have of Jamie the Kingslayer at the start is not overly flattering. He's a gnarly dude who is not afraid of confrontation, and he does not seem to give a good fuck what people think of him. As ever though, things are presented as slightly grey, and in the first book we are given the perspective of Jaime's brother Tyrion as well, who speaks more highly of his brother than other people do. Further ambiguity to Jaime as an Oathbreaker and Kingslayer is added in a conversation between Robert and Eddard where Robert defends his actions. The thing is, someone was going to kill Aerys, and the king was in fact worse than Hitler. Still, in the first book, Jaime more or less seems like a bad guy and quite irredeemable. Pushing Bran out of the tower was probably his worst act there. Now, of course, being the troll that George R.R. Martin is, many of the characters in the first book don't exactly end up where you expect them to. Eddard got perhaps a bit ahead of himself, Khal Drogo sees nothing but the sun and stars, and Jamie Lannister gets captured and put in chains. I doubt any of you saw that coming on the first time, did you? Jaime being captured and spending the majority of A Clash of Kings confined is where his arc and his ultimate redemption truly begins. The saying, "To judge how wealthy a man is, simply take away all of his money," comes to mind as Jaime is stripped of everything he once identified himself with. It's a cruel thing when you think about it. Jaime is named captain of the Kingsguard while unable to do anything about it. He is away from his beloved sister, who proceeds to cheat on him with his cousin. I'm not even going to go there here right now. His amazing good looks also begin to atrophy, as does the rest of his body. But he isn't redeemed yet by a long shot, and is still more vulgar than a teenage redneck when Catelyn visits his cell in a later chapter. So now that we've recapped the first two books, this takes us to the crux, the core, the meat of the point. A storm of motherfucking swords.